I saw beyond the glow.
It's almost midnight, October 29th, and I'm writing this down because, well, I didn't know what else to do. If something happens to me tonight, maybe somebody will see this and do something about it. I found it about a month ago in my mom's wallet. It was a cracked orange card that said
Boo Crew Rewards Card, Halloween Max, in bright orange letters. There were 5 membership levels printed across the bottom.
bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond. She had stamps all the way up through platinum. I didn't even know that Halloween Max store had a rewards program. At first, I just thought it was loyalty junk. I mean, who even keeps store punch cards anymore? But then I looked closer, and the stamps weren't printed. It was almost like the marks were burned into the plastic. Underneath each tier, in tiny letters, there were things like volunteer at a Boo Crew event, refer a friend, give generously. And then below all that, in a shiny foil lettering, Diamond members enjoy lifetime benefits. Membership is non-transferable and binding. After I found the card, Mom started acting different. It was little things at first, staying up late, humming the store jingle when she was making dinner, quiet like she didn't even realize she was doing it. And then she started coming home with things that I'd never seen before. Weird decorations, heavy candles that smelled just wrong. A mask one night that looked too much like real skin. She said that they were member exclusives. I told her that they were creepy. She looked at me for a long time and said, "You just don't understand what it means to really commit to something." Probably sounds stupid, but that's when I started locking my door at night. Then a few nights ago, she went out about 10:30. She didn't even say goodbye. She just grabbed her keys and her purse and said, "Don't wait up, honey." Her voice didn't really sound like her normal voice. Like it was her, but she was reading from a script. I texted her an hour later, nothing. I called twice, straight to voicemail. So I looked up Halloween Max on my phone, and all the store locations were shown as closed except one. It was about 20 minutes outside of town, out near the industrial park. The listing had been updated 2 hours ago, and it just said, "Special event tonight, members only." I told myself I wasn't going. And then about 10 minutes later, I grabbed my jacket. The parking lot was almost empty, but a handful of cars were parked in weird spots, crooked, like people left them in a hurry or weren't thinking straight when they got there. The front windows were papered over from the inside, so none of the displays were visible. No lights except a pale glow coming from somewhere deep inside the store. The door was propped open with a plastic pumpkin bucket, which I guess was on brand. I stood there for a long time, trying to decide if I was doing this, and then I heard voices inside. Low, rhythmic, not really talking, like they were reciting something, or chanting. So I went in. The aisles were dim. Most of the lights were off, except for a few black lights scattered around, and those made everything look purple and kind of sickly. There were shopping carts lined up near the registers that were filled with stuff, but not like Halloween store stuff, personal stuff. Framed photos, jewelry, a stuffed animal, a wallet. There was a taxidermy dog in there, of all things. They were all tagged with these little white labels, like donations. And then I heard my mom's voice, way back there. "I give freely. I give fully. I'm grateful for what I receive in return." It was coming from the back. I started following it and found that it was past the employees only door, but I figured at this point I'd broken in, I might as well keep going. I moved towards it, staying low, keeping to the aisles. The door was cracked open, just enough to see inside. I guess I was expecting something out of a movie, people in robes and, I don't know, Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom, some giant statue. It was just the meeting room. Folded chairs in a circle, maybe a dozen people sitting there, all wearing regular clothes, hoodies, jeans, a few work uniforms, normal people. But they were all holding those cards, and they were all staring at this guy who was standing in the middle. Again, nothing creepy or supernatural. He looked like a store manager, wearing an orange Halloween Max vest. He was too far away for me to read the name, but I kid you not, he was wearing a name tag. He wasn't chanting or waving his hands or anything. He was just talking. Quiet, steady, like a teacher with a small class. He said, "You've all reached Diamond Tier, and that's no small thing. It takes commitment, sacrifice, real investment." And now you're ready for the next step. You've given so much time, energy, pieces of yourselves. You've brought others in. You've shown that you're loyal. The final tier isn't something we advertise. It's earned, and it's permanent. And that's when I saw my mom, sitting in the second row, staring straight ahead, a large smile on her face. She didn't exactly look happy. She looked more relieved, like she'd been waiting for this for ages. The guy in the middle held up a small black card. No text that you could see from where I was watching. It just looked like a glossy black rectangle. This is what comes next. Once you accept it, there's no going back. No refunds, no cancellations. You become part of something bigger. Something that lasts. No pressure, but if you're ready, step forward. My mom was one of the people that stood up. She and 3 others. They walked towards him, and I left. I don't know what she was doing, but it felt like I didn't want to be there. I didn't run, I just walked back out, got in my car, drove home. That was 2 nights ago. She came home the next morning. She didn't say anything about where she'd been. She just made breakfast like normal, humming that jingle, and when I asked her if she was okay, she smiled and said, "I'm better than okay, sweetie." Her smile seemed a little too big, and I didn't ask what she meant. But today something arrived. A membership kit with a Boo Crew rewards card, brand new. It's got my name printed on it. Tier Bronze. And on the back, handwritten in Sharpie, "Welcome to the family. Your mother's investment includes you. We'll be in touch soon." I don't know what they want from me, but I know she gave them something, and I think I was part of the deal. If anybody's reading this and knows what that means, please reach out, because my mom's not talking, and Halloween is like less than a week away. When I got hired at the Hallo-Wellness lifestyle collective, I thought I'd landed a dream job. Their ad said, "Join the nation's first luxury wellness and seasonal lifestyle pop-up," which, in my head, meant candles and aromatherapy and maybe free herbal tea, Halloween style. What it actually meant was standing on a sidewalk in a 7-foot-tall inflatable black cat costume, waving at traffic, humiliating myself. My job title was Brand Experience Ambassador, but my real job was actually public embarrassment in a cute costume. I told myself it was temporary. I mean, Halloween money, right? The store was gorgeous though. Faux black marble floors, gold leaf signage, pumpkin-scented incense curling through the air. It looked like somebody gave a Spirit Halloween a spa makeover with a really good budget. The front half sold designer decor, crystal skulls, obsidian candle holders, velvet bats, fancy furniture that looked kind of like coffins but was also really nice. But the back half of the store is where things got strange. They had something called the Restoration Chamber, a softly lit room draped in gauzy curtains with Himalayan salt lamps, all glowing orange, and a looping voice from hidden speakers saying, "Release what no longer serves you. Release what no longer serves you." Guests could book a 15-minute energy reset. It was $20 for the basic, or $35 for the deluxe version with sound bowls and guided breath alignment. I didn't buy into it personally, but honestly, selling this was better than worrying about the rent. So when my manager asked if I'd help promote the chamber, I said, "Sure." And that's when he handed me the cat suit. Every morning, I zipped myself into that nylon nightmare, clipped the little fan to my belt, turned it on, and spent the next 6 hours waving at strangers like a demonic Macy's float. Behind me, the store speakers hummed, "Release what no longer serves you," over and over. People loved it. They took selfies with me, cars honked, kids came up to play with me and harassed me. But even through the fan's buzz, I could still hear something under the recording. It was like a whisper, deep and slow. You didn't hear it until you'd been listening to the message for like an hour or more. It was like a heartbeat syncing with the words. And customers would come out of the store, changed. Like calm, but too calm. Like somebody had pressed mute on their anxiety and everything else went along with it. I asked my coworker Mira what they did in there. She smiled and said, "It's just a sound bath. You should try it sometime. It helps you let go." Her eyes were so clear and calm, they looked kinda artificial. Later, I passed the chamber and I saw her kneeling close to one of the big salt lamps, the orange glow shining all over her face, and she was whispering. Not praying, like she was just having a conversation with the salt lamp. This place was really weird. And Hallo-Wellness wasn't just a Halloween thing. Their corporate had a seasonal flow plan. There was 3 to 4 months in each location. They started out spooky with the Halloween season and then ended spiritual with the winter holidays. November through January, they would become keeping the hollow from Halloween. But, Anyways, they'd move on from the skeletons and jack-o'-lanterns to selling black and silver ornaments that had a spooky, not quite gothic touch. They had mindful gifting bundles and Christmas ornaments of all things. Apparently, if that did well, they were going to push further and rebrand for Valentine's Day, but that was next year. Every shipment came stamped with the same label, HOLLW-PRGRM. I don't know what that meant. I never found out. Once a week, though, they would collect boxes of reclaimed energy items from the chamber. Rings, scarves, little notes that people left behind. I figured it was recycling until I saw where that stuff all went. There was a locked door off to the side. It was called Returns and Reclamation. One night, I peeked inside. There weren't shelves in there, shelves and boxes like I expected. It was mannequins, 30 of them maybe, dressed in display outfits. And each one had one of those reclaimed items pinned to its chest, with little notes in a strange language that I didn't recognize. The room glowed orange again from the salt lamps. The mannequins' hands were curling like they were mid-movement. I could swear I could hear breathing. Like, tons of the mannequins were alive. I couldn't find any of them breathing, but I heard it. The next morning, I told my manager. He smiled that smooth corporate smile. That's part of the process, he said. Energy doesn't die. We repurpose it. I laughed, mostly because I didn't know what to say to that. I mean, that's crazy, right? But the mannequins, they stayed in my head. I convinced Mira to let me come into the chamber after closing. She said fine, but that I had to go in alone. She couldn't come with me. So, after work, there I was, still in my cat costume, sort of deflated and half out of it, but not yet in my street clothes. Inside, it smelled like lavender and pumpkin spice and ozone. The curtains rippled. I sat cross-legged on a mat near the middle of the room and waited for enlightenment. Over time, the air tightened, I guess. My skin prickled. Static pressure like the room was breathing with me. And then the lamps started to flicker, which, was ridiculous. I mean, they were all glowing from electric lights, so why would the lamps be flickering? But they did. Suddenly, I felt like I wasn't alone in the room anymore. I looked around and it looked like I was, but it didn't feel like I was alone. And then a voice whispered from somewhere, and it wasn't the recording. It was alive, not pre-recorded. You're tired. Let go. And something in me started to. I thought this was going to be like a joke, some sort of hokey thing, but something in me kind of was letting go and going with it. And that scared me, because this was just supposed to be a joke. I wasn't trying to go through a religious conversion here or anything. I started to get up, stumbled backwards, caught the curtain, and I kind of fell back out through the door. But it wasn't the door to the main store, it was a side door to the reclamation room. And the mannequins were gone. People stood in their place, still perfectly still, their eyes glassy, and their hands clasped like they were praying. Mira was one of those people, and she turned her head slowly. You made it just in time, she said. The founder's about to arrive. The salt lamps all flared at once, orange light melting into pink, shifting into red. The people's mouths opened in unison, whispering that same line. Release what no longer serves you. Release what no longer serves you. And I ran. I crashed through the back door, still half-zipped into my stupid cat suit, tripping along the parking lot like a collapsing balloon animal. When I looked back, the store windows glowed like a heartbeat. And then, darkness. The next morning, Hallo-Wellness was gone. Empty glass and empty storefront. No sign, no records, just a hint of that pumpkin spice smell. There was one piece of paper on the front door, and it said that the space had now been leased to a Christmas boutique called Serenity Gifting. I was glad that I didn't disappear with the store, but I also kind of wondered, was I still getting paid?
It's an urgent announcement. If you can still hear this broadcast, please like and subscribe. This may be our last chance.
You can tell everything that you need to know about a Halloween store by the way it smells. The pop-up stores, those cheap-feeling places that appear overnight in vacant strip malls, those stores tend to smell like plastic and carpet glue. It's artificial fear. Nostalgia made in a factory to boost numbers for some people who wear suits and would never bother to put on a costume themselves. But Graves & Sons Costume Company, that place had been there for ages, and had smelled like dust and candle wax. The store sold masks and costumes, but it also rented costumes that were much better quality and far more elaborate than most people would ever want to buy or could afford to. Mr. Graves said the shop had been there since 1927, but nobody could find a lease that went back that far, and the neighborhood around it, they had modernized again and again over the times. It was like a time capsule. Inside the old wooden shop, costumes, masks, and photographs covered the walls. The floorboards hummed under your shoes, and if you stood still long enough, you could almost feel the heartbeat of the building itself. Faint, slow, patient. I started working there last September, mostly because I wanted a job that really felt like Halloween. I didn't want to be that guy scanning barcodes at the big chain Halloween store, or replenishing discount vampire fangs across the aisle from trending dog costumes. I wanted to be around real things. Rubber masks that had actually scared people. Velvet capes that had seen real moonlight. Mr. Graves liked that about me. He said he could tell when somebody respected the craft. Most of the store was open to the public. Rows of dusty shelves and crooked mannequins modeling monsters and historical figures from every era. As you entered the shop, you were greeted by Frankenstein's monster on the left and Abraham Lincoln on the right. And really selling the effect was the fact that these costumes were displayed on mannequins that were closer to wax figures than the usual featureless kind of mannequins you find in department stores. Their eyes seemed to follow you. The details were almost a little too real. Then, in the very back of the showroom, there was a narrow hallway that led to what he called the private gallery. The sign on the door said, "By appointment only." The first time I asked what was in there, Mr. Graves said, "History," and then he smiled at me. I asked him what kind of history, and he started walking away. Over his shoulder, he said, "Yours, if you keep asking so many questions." I guess that could have been kind of threatening, but he sounded more like he was laughing when he said it, so I decided to drop it for the time being. A few weeks in, I started noticing strange things. A mother tried on a clown costume she wanted to rent for her kid's birthday party, and she said she could feel a heartbeat in the fabric. A guy renting an old military uniform returned it the next day, pale, looking like he hadn't slept. He was insisting that he'd been kept awake all night by the sounds of cannons firing and voices shouting out orders, and sometimes screaming in the distance. I laughed it off at first. I mean, old costumes have energy, right? Sweat, adrenaline, memories, and some people have, how do I say this, big imaginations? But one night, closing up, I caught sight of something in a mirror behind the register, just for a half second, like the reflection hadn't gotten the memo that I'd already turned away. It happened again the next night, and the night after that. Always a little slower, like it was just trying to catch my attention, but not showing me anything. And it was always just enough to make my stomach knot. I finally worked up the nerve to ask Mr. Graves if he ever noticed anything strange. He didn't even look surprised. "Of course," he said. "The things we deal with become part of people's cherished and deep memories. You can't expect them to not carry some of that memory with them, can you?" He toyed with a small brass key on the counter, and he had a look on his face that was almost like he was challenging me. "If you really want to understand this place," he said, "come by after closing tomorrow. Bring respect and an open mind." The next night, the shop kind of felt different. The air was... thick's not the right word, but I don't know how else to say it. It was like the shop was listening. Mr. Graves unlocked the door to the private gallery, and he motioned me in. And it wasn't a storage room like I was expecting. It was a museum. There were dozens of costumes displayed on mannequins. Some really ancient-looking pieces were behind glass on the walls. In the center of the room, there was a well-worn harlequin suit that looked like something out of Edgar Allan Poe. There was a black lace widow's dress and a moth-eaten werewolf suit complete with extended arms and claws. Each was displayed on its own mannequin. Each was tagged with a name and date. Mr. Graves spoke softly, like we were in a church. "These are some of the originals," he said. "Every year, we let them breathe for a few weeks before the real Halloween, the night when everyone gets to be who they really are for one night." I laughed, kind of nervously, but he didn't. He turned off the overhead lights, leaving just the warm flicker of lanterns that were placed around the room. And then, the glass on some of those cases began to fog. At first I thought it was condensation, but then the fog started moving, forming outlines, faces pressing outward from behind the glass. Their eyes were deep and empty, curious and strange. The Harlequin raised a hand, slow and graceful, like it was inviting me to dance. I couldn't move. Some of their mouths began to move, silent at first, then there were whispers to go along with it. I couldn't catch words, just a rhythm, a pulse that was calling me closer. I felt something tug at my sleeve. A cold fingertip brushed my wrist. Then Mr. Graves pulled me backward, out of the room, slamming the gallery door shut. "Don't answer when they call," he said gently. "They want company, but they don't always let go." I learned that the hard way. I didn't understand what I'd seen, but I knew it wasn't a trick of the light. These costumes weren't exactly haunted. They were the hauntings. Every memory of being worn, every stitch of being created, soaked in the essence of the people that had worn them in the past. We went back to the front room, and I was about to go home, but Mr. Graves just stood there, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "It's time," he said, "and I should have done this years ago." He turned and started walking back towards the gallery, and for some reason I followed. He didn't really explain much, so I just helped him do what he was doing, and we dragged a bunch of the older costumes into the alley behind the store. The air smelled sharp, like rain and possibly a storm was coming. He stacked the costumes carefully, whispering each one's name as he laid it on the pile, like he was reading a eulogy. And then, suddenly he lit a match. The flames caught fast, velvet and silk twisting into gold ribbons of light. For a moment, it was beautiful. But then something changed. The smoke didn't rise, it reached. Shapes formed inside the fire. Hands, faces, whole bodies writhing in color and light. I could hear faint laughter, sighs, the echo of long-dead parties. The ghosts weren't leaving, and they didn't seem to be in torment. They were celebrating. Mr. Graves stood close, his eyes shining in the firelight. "Look at them, my old friends." And then the laughter turned sharp, and the fire had spread into the shop behind us, filling the night with a dancing orange light. I was about to pull out my phone to call the fire department when a dozen arms burst out of the flames. Charred, gray finger bones, black with ash. They grabbed Mr. Graves by the coat, shoulders, arms, throat. He didn't scream. He just looked at me, almost like he was grateful. And then the fire swallowed him whole. The last thing I saw of him was his hand, reaching back towards me for a moment before the blaze roared up and turned everything white. When it was over, the fire had gone out clean. No ash, no smell. The shop was still standing, but some of the costumes were gone. And I found the brass key lying in the soot, with a rolled-up envelope that had my name on it. Inside that envelope was the deed to Graves & Sons Costume Company, and there was a note that said, "Take care of them, and they'll take care of you." I've been unlocking the shop every morning since then. My paychecks keep showing up in my bank account, and customers keep coming in. Nobody's asking for Mr. Graves, though. Maybe they don't remember him, or maybe they never did. The mirrors are quiet now. So is the shop. But every so often when I'm closing up and the streetlights flicker through the windows, I catch a shimmer of old velvet in a dark corner by the door. And I see a coat, still smoking gently, hanging where it shouldn't be. And I can hear the faintest whisper, but I can't quite make out what it's saying. Sometimes, when I can't sleep at night,
these are the stories that I find.